time we blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
What's up, guys? My name is Brendan, and today I want to teach you everything I know about tricking terminology. Tricking terminology is how athletes are able to communicate with each other about the tricks they're doing and the skills they're performing. It's an extremely important part of the sport of tricking, so today I'm going to tell you everything I know about tricking terminology. So with that said, let's get started. First, I want to talk to you guys about how tricking terminology is just a little screwy. What I mean by that is the names of the skills don't often translate to the skills themselves. Let me give you guys 5 examples. The first example is the spider, spelled S-P-Y-D-E-R. When I first learned this trick, I thought it was called the spider because it kind of reminds me of the insect spider. But the spelling is totally different. It really confused me when I was first learning. The second example is the 540. A 540 is a tornado kick where you land on your kicking leg. That said, the 540 doesn't turn 540 degrees. You're maybe doing 360 degrees of air time, but even then, it doesn't really compare. The third example is the E-kick. I have no idea why it's called the E-kick. I thought it because the E had 3 little slashes in it for the 3 kicks you do across, but that doesn't really make sense. My fourth example is the cart full. When you do a cart full, you're not actually turning a full 360 degrees. Rather, your cartwheel ends just a little bit early, so that way when you jump and do the full, you're maybe twisting 270 degrees. My fifth and final example is the shuriken cork. I have no idea why it's called the shuriken cork. Maybe you look a little bit like a shuriken, but I think trickers just picked this name because it sounds cool. Guys, when you're approaching the sport of tricking, keep in mind that the names of the skills will not always translate over to the skills themselves. You kind of have to compartmentalize the language and the technique very differently. But that's kind of how it helps me understand it. I try not to focus too much on the names themselves and rather really focus on the trick behind them. One of the reasons why tricking terminology is so confusing is because we're a sport that incorporates a ton of different disciplines. For example, a lot of the names in kicks come from the names from Taekwondo. That's where we get tornado kick. And we also incorporate a ton of tricks from breakdancing. That's where we get coin drop. But we get a lot of our acrobatic technique from disciplines like gymnastics, where you get skills like the backflip. And because of all of these different disciplines, it makes the terminology of tricking kind of a mess because we take from all these different disciplines without giving it one defined terminology. And that's what makes it so confusing. Guys, when you're approaching the sport of tricking, it really helps to have a little bit of a background discipline, or just pick one discipline to kind of focus on when you're first learning the sport. That will help a ton, especially when it comes to the terminology. Because keep in mind, the people who do capoeira are going to name the skills very differently from the people who do Taekwondo or the break dancers. Another reason why tricking terminology is so confusing is that we use the legacy system. The legacy system implies that whoever is the first in the world to land the trick gets to name the trick. And guys, that has led to some really weird names. For example, the Australian tricker Tim Farley made legend when he landed the world's first cork in, back out. And afterwards, when he was naming the trick, he chose to name it Snatch Cannon. I have no idea why, but that is the name of the trick now. That is in the tricking history books, and that has followed suit to a ton of other world's first tricks. And that's one thing that also makes the terminology really hard. When people first land a skill, they'll kind of give it whatever name they want. The sport of tricking also includes weird skills that kind of don't have names because they're combinations of a bunch of different other skills. I'll be showing you guys 3 tricks that are examples of skills that I cannot name. The trickers who first landed these skills, I'm sure they get naming rights, but honestly, I just have no idea. Guys, leave me a comment down below. What are the names of these tricks? Because I don't know. Tricking is also a worldly sport. It incorporates athletes from all over the world who all speak different languages. A tricker who is from Japan will probably give the tricks different names than one who is from Germany, France, or the United States. Because trickers are so far spread out all over the world, we often give the names of tricks dependent on our language in the community that we're in. And guys, that's one thing that you really need to pay attention to, especially when you're first learning tricking, is being cognizant that sometimes people will not be speaking the same language as you, and that will make communicating about tricking a little bit difficult. That's why I really recommend, if you're ever trying to figure out the name of a skill, just show someone a video. Don't try and describe it by words, because it's really hard to describe even well-known skills like the cork swipe knife. This video would not be complete if I did not take a second to talk about mainstream terminology versus TKT, true kick terminology. Mainstream terminology is kind of the terminology that a lot of trickers grew up with. That's what I grew up with. We name tricks kind of whatever the names are. I learned 540 as 540, even though it doesn't have 540 degrees of rotation. But the trick names are different in TKT, because TKT stands for true kick terminology. The kicks are named for exactly as they appear. The setup, the amount of rotation in the air, and then the kick that's being done. So tornado kick turns into cheat 180 round, cheat 720 turns into cheat 360 hook, and cheat 900 turns into cheat 540 round. Guys, if you want to learn tricking terminology, I recommend you learn both kind of classes, the mainstream name and also the TKT name, the true kick terminology, because both will give you a better idea of what the skill is supposed to look like. Guys, if you haven't noticed by now, tricking terminology is very individual. And what I really recommend athletes do is figure out their own personal tricking dictionary that they have in their head that they're willing to whip out whenever they need it. Everybody is going to compartmentalize their skills slightly differently, and that's not a bad thing. that can often help people learn and see the skills from a new perspective. And guys, I also updated the tricking terminology page on howtomastertricking.com. And I include some resources, some additional links, if you guys want to understand some people who have really put their time into discussing and deciphering tricking terminology. Go check out the Loop Kicks Trictionary, Club 540, or the Trick Theory Trictionary. All three of those are great resources if you want to understand tricking terminology and get a really in-depth view. But guys, keep in mind all three of these sites have slightly different terminology systems. And you have to kind of combine them if you want to compartmentalize the skill in a way that makes sense for you. Finally, I want to end with a question. What is tricking terminology for? For me, tricking terminology is a tool to help us discuss the tricks we're doing and educate each other on how to do them. That said, it's not perfect. Guys, keep in mind that everybody will have their own personal tricking dictionary that's often dependent on their culture or geography. Thank you so much for watching. Please go out, learn the names of the tricks, and if there's a tricking athlete who wants to take on the challenge of creating the first tricking dictionary, you have my full support. Guys, go check out the links I mentioned earlier, figure out the names of your tricks, and have a lovely day.